Alright, so this is my milestone. What I'm going to do first, I'm going to go over how I'm doing this scripting. So this is wire mod. You probably won't be able to see the text over here on the side just because of how the video is being compressed. But so I have this plate here that has a bunch of chips on it. And so these chips represent functions. So this function I'm looking at right now is an up-down counter. The increment to go up is set to this wired trigger, and this trigger just makes a box depending on what I tell its dimensions to be. So if there's a box right there that covers up those two sides, and so every time the player walks into that trigger, that goes up by 1 because it's an increment counter. And actually, so I have its calculation set to this chip that is just a constant value of 1, so I could set that to be more if I wanted it to. And so the way, I should say, over here I have these NPC spawners, and the way that their settings are set is they will spawn one NPC and then deactivate and spawn no more NPCs until they are activated again. So I have set active on the NPC spawner set to this rig, but I don't have it set to this increment counter because this goes up every time the player goes through the trigger, and that would mean every time I'd walk from here to here it would spawn those NPCs again, and we don't want that. So that's what these 3 chips do. So this is an equals chip that says A. It has, A, B. When A is equal to B, this chip will have a value of 1. So when A equals B, true. So A being the up-down counter, and B being, again, the value 1. And so I have another up-down counter that increments based off this equals chip. So when this increment function receives a value of 1, it's going to increment by the calculation. So when this becomes 1, when this hits 1, and that is 1, so those two are going to equal. Then these chips equal, so this equals chip is going to be 1. It's kind of a, sounds weird in words, but it makes sense visually. And so that is going to go up to that 1. So basically, all of this right here gives me a true the first time the player walks through the trigger, but not any time after. And so that's what those NPC spawners are set to. And then furthermore, I have the reset of both of these chips set to a trigger in this between point. This is the end of the room before it, and this is the start of that room. And I have a bridge between so that I can control things like that. So this, when the player walks over this trigger, it essentially resets all of those functions in those rooms, because I have them set to reset on this trigger. And so this trigger comes and opens this door. Open is set to this trigger. And once they've walked through, they can't get back to that trigger. So they can't open the door. And this is the same print you saw over there, but handles the NPCs over here. And that's the trigger to handle these NPCs. So walk through, kill the dudes up front, because they spawn from behind once the player walks through the door. As soon as they walk through the door, those fire. And so this trigger that's over there happens once, and they spawn. Terrible FPS here. And so I can walk back through, this trigger and they don't spawn again. And I have set that up for 1, 2, not that one, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of 7 or 8 levels. So I have I've completed everything but the boss fight and the dialogue levels. So that's like a rest area, and that'll be the boss fight. And I haven't completed those two. Yeah, so that's my milestone. Everything has been coming along nicely, and yeah.